So let's look at cross-origin resource sharing, right? So like I said in our previous class, I said that this particular concept is more like a configuration, right? And it's necessary because of how the browser works. So let's just go to our VS Code and then we do the extension and let's take in there, so we don't have to switch screens as usual. Okay, so I'll just close this out and then I will go to my endpoints. Okay, so this is where I have all our source code. Save it. And then we'll go ahead and activate our environment because we may likely install something. So library box /script /activate. And then we can navigate into our main folder. And then we can, let's see, what's in there. Okay, so that's open it up in VS Code. Right. Cross-origin resource sharing. So what does this man really do, right? What does this man really do while our VS Code is coming up? So basically, what CORS does, or what cross-origin resource sharing does in Fast API, is that it enables front-end application, okay, that is running on your browser to make a request to your back-end API or a different origin. So that's basically what cross-origin resource sharing means. So it means that if you have any application that is running on a different origin, and that's your backend is not running, you can set up that configuration that your backend can accept requests from that origin. That's basically what cross-origin resource sharing means, and that's from a name. It means that you're accepting things from a different origin. I will tell you what origin is. So let me just continue with this file, right? Let me continue with this file that we have here, because after this concept, we are going to create a new folder and look at how we can set up for a bigger application, right? So let's just put the configuration here, right? So I'll just put that note down here. Okay, this was where we did middleware. Okay, so cross-origin, CORS. Okay, so it basically what enables. So it enables application that is running, or application that enables applications to make requests to your backend, right, or to your router, you could say, however I put it, or path, however you want to do it, right? Router path URL. So basically, that's what I mean by backend, right? So it enables application to do what? To make requests to your backend on a different origin. So it means that each of them are somehow not sitting in the same origin, but because of this configuration, that those applications that is sitting on a different origin can make requests to your backend that is sitting on another origin. But then you'll be wondering what exactly is origin. So origin is basically defined by protocol, domain, and port. So origin is defined. Sorry, that should be defined. It's defined by protocol, domain, and port. All right. So this is basically like a URL, right? This is basically like a URL. So it basically makes this should be like front end application, because this configuration is specifically for front end applications. So front end application that's running on a separate URL, right? So what makes up a complete URL, right, is what is the protocol, the domain, and the port number of that particular URL. That's what makes up a complete URL. Okay. So now if you put all these things together, it's considered as an origin, right? It's considered as an origin. So if I have something like this, let's say our URL that we've been using, http colon okay, / then I have localhost and then I have what 8,000, right? Now I think this basically what we usually have as our default our default unicorn server, right? So where we have this is the protocol, right? So the protocol here can either be HTTP or HTTPS, right? So it can either be HTTP or it could be HTTPS, right? And then your local, and then your domain, which in this case is our local host, and then the port, right? Now this makes up what we know as origin. Okay, so let's say that take for instance your backend, right, is running on this URL, right? By default, most of our backend runs on this URL. So basically, what usually follows is mostly your path, right? So your path comes in after all these things happens, right? So let's assume that this is where your backend is running. So I just put down here backend, right? And let's say the front end guys built their own application, and let's say locally their application is running on something like this. Let's say their front end application is running on something like this. Let's say local host port 8080, right? Now, if you look at this URL and that's those are two different origins, right? So if the front end guys try to make a request to your back end guys, or so to your back end, right? By default, your browser will not permit that request, right? So basically, what happens is that for every request that you make, right, your browser enforces this cross origin resource sharing by doing what? By sending a pre-flight, a pre-flight. So basically, what happens is that your browser, right, will send a pre-flight, flight option request. There's a kind of request that's called option. I think if you go to Postman, you would see the option as a type of request. So we have get, we have post, we have put, patch, and rest of them. There's also option, right? So by default, your browser would send this request to the server, right? Right, to the server. And basically, what it's waiting for is for the server to respond if it permits a request to come from this particular origin. And if you don't have this resource sharing setup, your browser by default, your server will notify the browser that we do not accept requests from that origin. What happens is that when the front end guys now finally make that request, your browser will bounce it back, saying that he cannot make that request to that particular origin, right? So that's basically what happens. And majority of the time, or most of the time, if when deploying our backend code, okay, we have to set up this particular configuration. If not, the probability of people or our team members making requests to our endpoint is almost impossible, right? So it's almost impossible. So let's see how we can quickly set up this configuration in Fast API, where we can either list out a specific origin where we can accept requests from, or we can possibly open it up for any kind of origin. So it's all up to us. Let's see that, right? Let's see how we can go ahead and fix this, right? So I'll comment on this out, right? And let's see how we can set up this configuration. All right. So to set up this configuration, all right. So to set up this configuration, we need to bring in the 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 cross origin resource sharing middleware from Fast API, and then with that we can use that to do what to set up this configuration. Right. So let's go back and let's import that. So this man is living or is staying in the middleware section, specifically in the cross origin middleware. So that's where we bring up that class, and with that class we can use that class to do what to set up this configuration. So we simply go to Fast API and we import that. So we say from Fast API, right? From Fast API, API. Sorry, this will be from fast API. We want to import. Cross origin resource sharing middleware. But this man lives in fast API middleware. Remember, it's in the middleware, but specifically in the CORS. So it's specifically in the cross origin resource sharing. But this man stays in the middleware folder, and this man stays in the fast API module as a whole. Okay, so let's go back and let's go ahead. Let's import that man now. So you have to bring in the CORS, so the cross origin resource sharing middleware. So that is the man that is responsible for setting up that configuration. And this man takes in a lot of options, right? There are specific or there are limited number of options that this man have that you could use for that configuration, which I'll list it out. So I'll list this man out. Okay, so let me just list out some few options that are most useful options that we have available. Most useful options that we have available. So what we have available is we have the options of which origin we can allow. So that option is available in the allow _ origin, right? So this is the man that is responsible for listing out what the allowed origin that should make a request to our server. We also have to set the allowed credentials. Okay, we also have the what kind of method do we want to accept in our backend. So that is the allow method. This man takes in a list, right? So basically, this origin method takes in list, right? And this one takes in a Boolean value, so either true or false. We also have what kind of header parameter do we need, or should we even allow headers, right? So that man, they also take care of that particular configuration. So these are the most useful or the commonly used ones, right? They commonly used ones. So we are gonna take this man and we're gonna set up that configuration. And how do we do that? So what we have to do is we need to attach this to our instance of fast API. So let's go and see how that's done. So this is the instance of our fast API here, right? So basically what you will do is to come here and then attach this man to that instance of fast API. So here we just say app, and then we say dots. And what we want to do is we want to say add middleware. All right, so this is the man that we have to do or use and add that particular middleware. So by default, this man takes in the built-in cross origin resource sharing middleware first, and then after that, we can add the rest of the configuration. So that man takes that man in as one of the required parameters, right? So after that, then we can start setting up the rest. Okay, so here we could say allow origins. So allowed _ origins, please. This man should be spelled exactly this way. And this man takes in a list, right? So the origin here can be as many as possible, right? These origins here can be as many as possible. So here you could set up all the origin that you want. So I can come here and say origins, right? And as origins, right? And I could say this should be a list, right? And here I could set up all the origin that I want for it to make a request to our backend server. So here I could say probably let's assume that the front end guy is running on HTTPS, right? / and then let's say they are running on localhost. Okay, localhost the port 8000, right? Port 8000. Assuming that is where the front end guys are running, and let's say at some point when the front end guy is not deployed, let's say that when the front end guys deployed, what they have deployed is running on, let's say HTTPS / and then we have, let's say they deployed to let's say CodeCamp 5, let's say CodeCamp 5 and then .com, right? So assuming that is where they'll be deploying to. So basically we want to have all the available origin probably when they are working locally and when they are actually the ones deployed, all right? So we want to make sure that we cover as many origin as possible, right? But just so you know that this origin can always be altered. So if there is a need that the front end guys have changed their origin, then what they want to do is to come back here and you do what, and you update this list of origin, right? So I can just simply come here and do what, and pass this man here as origin. All right. So that will save as that will save as our accepted. Oh my God! Please hold on. This one should be good. All right. So basically, what you will do is to come here and update that origin if need be, right? So remember, origin comprises of what, of the protocol, the domain, and the port number. All right. So this port number is optional, right? So it can come in, it cannot come in, but the key important thing is what is this domain and the protocol, right? So if someone should come here and put something like this, right? If someone should come here and put something like this, like this localhost without the port, these are two different origin, right? So this particular origin here is on 8,000, but this other one here has no port, right? So these are two different origin. So depending on what the front end guys have at hand, you know what, you take it and you fill it in here as well as the accepted origins, right? At the accepted origin. So, but then if you're not too sure of where exactly the front end guys will be deploying to, or where they are, or on which origin they're actually running their front end application, what can you do? You can come here and you can use a wildcard. So a wildcard is basically what where you can come here and say that you accept all origin. That's basically what wildcard is, right? I'm accepting all origin. And how do I do that? You simply come here and I would give it. Remember, this origin must always take a list, right? So I can come here and give it a list, right? And then in this list here, I could just give it what, a string of asterisk. So asterisk then means, right, accept all origin. So if I don't have a list of origin like this, right, I can just simply come here and pass this. This means take in all the origin. So it means that everybody can do what, every front end application can send a request to this particular server, or to the origin that our server will be executing on, right? So that's one of the configuration, right? So the other ones, they are the allow credentials, right? So allow credentials. So this one tells your server that a request can come in with cookie parameter and the rest of those parameters, right? So allow all these credentials. So this is with all these names are in plural form, right? So like allow origins. This is allow, not all. Allow origins, and then this one takes in a boolean value. So in this case, I can set it to true, right? And then comma again. So this should be comma here again. And then the other configuration here again that makes a lot of sense is the allow headers, right? So allow headers. So this needs to be available, if not the problem. So, right, so allow headers. So this man too also takes in a list. So here I could also give it a wildcard saying allow all kinds of headers, right? And could have another say allow method, right? Allow underscore methods. So in this case, I could just say allow all methods. So basically all the kinds of HTTP method, allow all of them. Right. So that is just that about that. And with that, we are done with that configuration, right? With that, we are done with that configuration. So this, okay, so the last three here is compulsory. So the moment you want to alter the cross origin middleware, so first of all, you must accept what the default behavior, all right, and then from there you can do what, you can alter these other options, right? So the default behavior is that this man here cannot accept a request from external origin, right? So now apart from that, this class also have other functionality that helps fast API to do what, to process requests. So when adding a middleware, we have to add it first, and then we can alter the ones that needs to be altered, right? Like the origin, the credentials, and the header and the methods, right? So those are the key configurations that you mostly use, right? So That's just that. That is just that. So you can either get this list of origins like this, right, and then you pass it to your other origins. But if you're not too sure, then you can actually use this. Please, if you do not set up this configuration and you deploy, nobody can make requests. Okay, probably I think first API may accept get request, but the moment they start doing post request, it starts trying error that the request cannot be sent to that server, right? So this configuration here is mandatory. Though it looks simple, but it's very useful. That is very useful. Question pertaining to cross origin resource sharing. Before we can dive in and see how we can arrange our files properly. Because so far we've been treating a single file as a standalone project, which by default should not be in that manner. Question. Please, I believe that you guys have been hearing me all this while. I want to ask you. All right, question.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Mr. Bassi?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I think Gabriel is raising his hand. Okay. My question is regarding I didn't really get the concept, so I don't even know what question.
Okay, so
I understand where you talked about the origins, but this particular app add middleware that we just added. Yeah, trying to understand the concept.
okay, all right. So by default, right? By default, okay, so by default, right, we know that what that fast API, not really fast API, the browser itself does allow you to do what to send a request from your running application to another server that is sitting on a different origin. So what happens is that for each time your front end guy sets a request from wherever they're sitting on, wherever origin they're sitting on, okay, what happens is that the browser send a pre-flight option request, right, to confirm that server that needs to handle that request accepts requests from this particular origin where the front end guys is sending this request from, right? So by default, Fast API does not accept requests outside its own origin, right? So it means that if you intend to make a request that your front end should be sitting on the same origin that when the Fast API is sitting, right? So let's assume that Fast API is sitting on our usual port, right? HTTP. This is a local host, so this might is not secure. So HTTP localhost port 8000, right? It means that whoever needs to make a request to this server, your application should also be sitting on where? On HTTP localhost port 8000, right? If not, you cannot communicate with our server. All right. So knowing that, to alter that default behavior, we need to do what? We need to configure, or we need to enable cross-resource sharing in Fast API. And to do that, we simply do what? We simply enable it with what? With this add middleware. So the add middleware is a built-in function that comes alongside the instance of your Fast API. So it can only be available at the instance of your Fast API. So it's similar. So if you look at your Fast API here, right, this is the instance of your Fast API. App here holds the entrance, all right, to your Fast API. Now, if I should go app dot, right, we see some built-in functions, right, that is accessible from the instance of that Fast API. So one of them is what is adding of middleware, right? It's adding of middleware. So here we want to add a middleware called cross origin resource sharing middleware, right? So cross origin resource sharing middleware. So you want to add this middleware to the list of middlewares that is being added to Fast API by default, right? And then from there we want to configure it to do what? To accept certain requests from certain origin. So after invoking this function, right? Now this function, to configure your middleware, we need to add that middleware to the add middleware function. And this middleware, this cross origin middleware is available in Fast API middleware. By default, this is not added among your default middleware in Fast API. So you need to bring this man out, right, and then add it manually, like what we've just done here, like what we've just done here, right? And then after that has been added, we can further configure it for certain kind of functionality, right? If you just add this man and without these people, right, that default behavior would still stand, right? And requests cannot come in there, right? So now what we now have down here is what is additional configuration to that middleware, right? So the first configuration here is us then saying that for the allow origins that we want this specific people or these specific URLs to be able to send requests from their ends down to our server. And seeing this origin takes in a list, right? So we can either create a list up there, call it origins, right? And then this list will contain a string, all right, of origins, right? A string of accepted origin, like what we just have up there, right? And then at the end of it, we can pass that list to the allow origin configuration. And then another kind of configuration that we need again is what is the allow credentials, right? So now if I set this man to true, it simply means that we are saying that cookies and authorization headers is being accepted, right? So it means that if there is need for the front end guys to send in a value via a cookie parameter, because we've set these credentials to be allowed, that parameter can come into our server, right? So that is the whole point of this allowing of credentials. So this particular one here is specifically for cookies, right? It's specifically for cookies and authorization headers. If you take it off, if you change this one to false, then we cannot accept cookies. So by default, this one is set to false, right? By default, it's set to false. That's why we have to come here and explicitly change it to what true. And then for the headers, this headers here is basically the list of headers that we can accept in our request. So if you remember, if we go to Postman and navigate to headers, there are some built-in, there are some default parameters that lives in the header section of your request, right? Now here we are saying that we are accepting all the possible parameters that can ever live in the header section. A typical example of things that can live in header section is the content type, right? So content type is more like a descriptive information about a particular request. So most times, most server actually make use of this particular information. So here we are basically just saying that we accept all the possible parameters that can ever live in the header section of a request. And then the other one there is what is for method. We'll here an answer that we accept all methods, be it get, be it post, be it a patch, and so on and so forth, right? But then if there is need for you to be able to configure for only specific kind of request, let's say get and post, then we can come here and explicitly say what that I only need get and post, right? And what happens is that when the request wants to come in, this middleware will check if that request is either a get or a push request, right? Then anything outside get or push request now becomes a problem, right? So, but here we are not saying, well, here we are not using, but here we are not using what we call a wildcard. A wildcard simply means all, accept all, right? So that's what we are using here, and here. And I said that the reason why we are using wildcard there, right, is that assuming you do not know the available origin that the front end guys is sitting on, then you can do what press room for what to accept all requests, so that just in case they also send a request to that server, it can actually come through, right? But in real production, you do not want to set your allow origin to a wildcard. So you reach out to the front end guys and you collect their origin. Where are they sitting on? Where is their front end running from, right? So you get that origin and then you do what you place it there, right? But for development sake, you can actually leave it empty. Now, once we set up this configuration, right, this now tells Fast API that okay, I want you to do what to change that default behavior. Now you can do what? Now you can start accepting requests from external origins, right? Be it our origin or be it any other origin. Just accept everything, right? That's basically what we are saying there, right? That's basically what we are actually saying there. So here we enable here, and then what we configure, right? So that is the configuration that I was actually trying to talk about in our previous class. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Yes, yes, it's understandable now. I understand it now.
Oh, okay, all right. So any other question? Any other? All right. So the silence, no other. All right. So now let's.
Boss, good morning. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you.
I don't know. Seems like I'm the only one not understanding this thing, Sha.
Wait.
I want to ask, is it like if you want to, okay, let me assume now, if front-end developers, they are finished developing their code and we want to use what they have already coded. Is it when we use this middleware? If we want to input our code with their own, like we want to use their code, is it when we use this code, this particular middleware?
Okay, all right. Okay, so I think I get your confusion. Right. Let's look at something. Let's look at something. Okay, so now let's look at we have two broad categories two broad categories, right? Of web development, right? Of web development, right? And let's see if this will make sense. We have the front end, right? We have to have the back end, right? So because since both of them are web deals with web, right? Mean that each of them needs to interact with their URL, right? Each of them needs to interact with their URL, right? Your server is URL, their front end page is also sitting on the URL, right? So each of them are sitting on a URL. So the thing here is that most of the time, both parties will be working independently from each other, right? So the front end guys will design their front end independent of the back end, right? And the front end will build their back end logic independent of front end. But then after this has been built out separately, right? Now it's time for interaction. It's time for interaction, right? It's time for interaction. Okay, let's say it's now time for this. The front end guys want to test or view what they built, right? Let's say the front end guys want to view what they built. So let's say, okay, let me see if I can show you using this file. This is what I show you this file. So then the front end guys have what we call live server. So I don't have it installed, right? So now in the front end guys have what we call live server. So live server is more like it's just like our back end server. But this particular one is for the front end server, right? So where it gives them that feel of how their website will look like when deployed, right? So basically, it generates like a domain and a URL for them as well, and they can use that for testing. So let's say at the end of it, or what they have is something like this. Let's say HTTP :/ let's say localhost. All development sits on localhost. All development sits on localhost. This localhost is a number. I think 127.1. I can't remember the number, but I know that the localhost is a port number, right? Sorry, it's a number. And then after that, followed by what? Most time it comes with a port number of 8,000. Most times it doesn't come with any port number, right? And then if they go to this URL, right, they can view the website that they built so far. Now if you look at this, same thing happens with backend, right? Same thing happens with backend. Are you guys hearing me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Correct.
Yes, we can hear you.
So that means I need to somehow shift very close to my device. All right. Okay. So now let's say, so let's say that this is where the front end guys need to do what needs to go and do what and view their what their design or their homepage or their front end part, right? So they actually go to that URL and they view it. Okay? So now yes, exactly. So this is the actual number for localhost. So all localhost runs on this. So let me just replace this. Right. So let me just replace this with that. Exactly. Right. So yes, the port number here could be of any number, right? So the front end guys, I think most of them front end project mostly runs on the I can't remember, but it's not 8,000, except they have to explicitly mention 8,000. But front end project mostly runs I don't know, but let's assume that everyone runs on 88, right? 80 as port number. Show me your hand is up.
Oh, what you doing?
Sorry?
When you're to ask.
Now what?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear now.
All right. Said when you're done explaining, I have a question to ask.
Okay. All right. So let's say that the front end guys have built their own, right? So they finished their front end design. Basically, they've moved a design that was done by the UI UX, and they've committed that design to actual HTML, right? And each of the pages has their own route, right? So you can have like /in/home, right? You can have about and so on and so forth. So each of these parts takes them to a page that they've designed. But then they have this origin here, right? They have the origin there. So and then same thing happens with backend, right? They finish their endpoint, but then each of their endpoint is sitting on this origin, say HTTP. But then let's copy this one. Let's put it here. All right. So this is where backend goes to do what? Goes to test their. This way backend goes to test each of their routes, right? So they can test their about as well, right? And get what is there. They can test their contacts and so on and so forth, right? Now this works if you are testing on your end, right? This works if you are testing on your end. But then what happens the moment front end guys now want to okay, let us do what? Let us now save dynamic content. So what do I mean by the dynamic content? Let us send a request to the back end, fetch some information and display it on the front end. So that's where interaction will start to come in. So that's where cross-origin interaction comes in, right? So at this point, each of them sitting on their own separate origin needs to interact with another origin. So in that case, by default, your browser, or not really your browser, by default, most server does not actually allow this kind of interaction. And Fast API is one of them, right? So it means that if the front end guys now try to send a request, let's say to the back end origin /about, right? Let's assume that the front end guys try to send a request down here so that they can fetch whatever is here and display it in their about page as well, right? But then when they send this request, what happens is that the browser will do what we call a pre-flight request. So a request that goes before the main request, right? So basically, it comes to this server and check if this server accepts requests from this particular origin, this man here, right? So it checks, can this server process a request that comes from that origin? And by default, like I said, some server does not, and Fast API is one of them. So Fast API will let that pre-flight request to know that it cannot accept that request. So what happens is that it will go back and throw an error forward for the front end client that they cannot make requests to that server, right? So at that point, it's not really the front end guy, right? Their code is correct. It's just that our server is not ready to communicate with any other external origin, right? So in that case, there is need for the cross-origin interaction configuration, right? So there's need for us to come and let our server know that this front end guy that are sitting in this origin is part of our team, right? And as such, the server should accept the request that comes from them, right? the server should access the request that comes from them. So now, how does fast API states that this can be done? So fast API states that in order to actually configure the cross origin interaction, that you have to do what, add the cross origin middleware using the add middleware function, right? So it means that you have to come here and add this man cross origin middleware to the list of middlewares that you have in the default fast API middleware. And how do you add a middleware? You do what you simply use this. Now you'll be wondering, why didn't we just do this? Why didn't we just come here and do what we did with it and do this, right? And just add this middleware like this. But this is a custom middleware, right? So we are building this particular middleware from scratch, right? But this other middleware is not custom, it's built in the fast API, right? So basically you just simply add it to the list of built-in middleware that should. Sorry guys, my talk is going on. All right, so let's proceed. Okay, so where was I? All right. Okay, so now that we have to do what add this cross origin middleware among the list of middleware, and from there we can do what we can further configure it, right? We can further add these options of configuration, right? So the most important one here is what is the allow origin. So this is where we set which origin should send in a request to our server, right? So this man here is responsible for doing that. If not, the front end guys here, right, will not be able to do what, to send in their request here. So the only time the front end guys can send in that request here is for the front end guys to explicitly or find a way of making sure that their port is exactly the same as the port of the back end, right? But then to save them from going through other stress, you can just simply come here, ask them to give you their port, and then what you do, you copy this their port, right? You copy this their own their origin, and then you put it among the list of origins. So you can come here and put it among the list of the origins, right? Put it among the list of origins, and then pass it as a parameter to your origins, right? And then you can further set other kinds of configuration, right? Another one is let's assume that the front end guys are also let you know that they'll be sending in cookie, right? Because the moment you add this man here is set to what, to false, meaning that we cannot accept cookies. So, but you can leave it out if there is no need for it for that particular cookies, right? But then every other thing you need to somehow configure what the method and the headers. So these are like the configuration that must be followed once this man has been added to the middleware, right? Once that man there has been added to the middleware. I don't know if that makes sense. Are we together?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's basically what happened, right? That's basically what happened. Just know that that without this configuration, the front end guys will likely not be able to interact with us, right? Without this configuration, the front end guys will likely never interact with us, right? So this setup here or this configuration here is what is just to enable that the front end guys can further send in requests from wherever they are, right? So maybe at some point the front end guys can deploy their front end, right? Because of course front end can deploy, back end can deploy, right? So let's say the front end guy actually uses render, or let's say they use a Vercel. I believe you all know Vercel, right? And they deploy their front end to Vercel, right? That means that their port is now what their port is likely going to be what HTTPS, right? Colon www. Normally www it could be let's say maybe CodeCamp, CodeCamp and .Vercel, right? .com maybe, right? So that could be like their new domain once they deploy. So in that case, what do? You do what? You come back again. You collect the origin again. And then you do what? You go back to your list of origins, put it among them, right? So that when a request is made from the deployed version, that request can come through, right? Because remember, once you deploy, you get what you get a most secure origin, right? So this one here is when they are working locally, and this one here is when they deploy. So basically, you want to cover both the local origin and the deployed version, right? So we have to make sure that we account for both parties. If not, the request can only be made from when they are offline, but when they actually go online, the request cannot actually be made, right? So that has to also be covered among our list of allowed origins. All right. Any question? Someone had a question. Right. Show me your hands up.
Yeah. So it's more like a confirmation. Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to say, I'm kind of like dragging you back, so sorry about that. It's about the middleware concept, because you said last class when you were teaching us about middleware that it takes in an app decorator with a string HTTP. And now that we see that, sorry. And now that we see that, the front end can actually interact with our old code, right? And our middleware instance, or I call it routes, let me just call it routes, is meant to trigger us before any of our endpoints trigger. So in that kind of situation whereby we have origin that is coming from HTTPS, but our app decorator in the middleware is only taking a string of HTTP, does that string covers it, or do we need to come and put in HTTPS there also? I don't know. Just a question.
These covers for both HTTP and both HTTPS, right? So Fast API just specifically said that this man should take in HTTP, right? So this man here, it covers for both. So please not come and do HTTPS and don't add ACFS. It should be HTTP, right? That should cover for both here. But this particular middleware here is not custom, right? This one here is built in. It's Fast API middleware, right? So it's built. So that's why we added it using the add middleware function. But then when building our own, that's a custom middleware, then we must follow up this setup as it is.
So does that mean generally when like maybe when calling I don't even know what to call that. What do you even call it again? I think you called it something like you call it a protocol, right? When calling a protocol, HTTP can stand for both the HTTP and the HTTPS. Does that mean generally can stand for both?
Let's see. No, it cannot stand for both generally. Right? It cannot stand for both generally. So the thing is that HTTP is the same as HTTPS. The difference is that one is secure. This SD means secure, right? So it's this hypertext transfer protocol, right? So one day the SDA is secure. So it's secure. It means that you've moved from local development and you are live, right? And when you are live, they need to add a security to your protocol, right? So that's why. So this SCA mostly comes from where you're hosting, right? So most hosting provide that they automatically add that SSL certificate to your domain, and that comes with HTTPS, right? So HTTPS cannot an HTTP, or should I say HTTP cannot really stand generally for HTTPS, right? So HTTP is like the unsecured version, while HTTPS is the secured version. I don't need that method.
It does. It does. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
All right. So I think someone's hand. Gabriel, your name is up.
The thing is that I don't want to be taking you back and forth. It's just that I don't understand some part of this. Like, I want to ask, I want to understand this aspect of code on their own device, local device. So you are with this now, you are saying that we can actually access those codes without them deploying it. And we can use this to access their codes without them deploying it online or something like that. Because the last time I checked, like you said something like it's impossible to access somebody's local code that's in their own personal devices. So I don't know if what you are saying here is that we can access those codes that they are yet to deploy online, like this code down, this middleware.
Oh, no, this cross origin middleware, right, is basically to aid interaction from two different origin, right? That's basically what that man is doing, right? So that man has no access to someone's code, right? So it basically allows front end guys to send requests on a different origin to our server. That's basically what cross origin is doing, right? So if not, then that request would not actually come. But if not, that request will not actually come. If there is a means I can set up front end, but to take time, I would have set up an HTML file that sits on another host, right? And then try to send in a request. Then probably you would see, that would not actually go. Right? So that's basically what this cross origin is doing, right? So it's preventing it by default. It's allowing. Oh yes, by default it doesn't allow request to come from another origin to our server. So this conversion here is just to alter that default behavior where requests can come in from external origin. All right. So we're not really accessing someone's code, right? We're just allowing a request from a different origin. It asking if another person can have access to someone's local host. Okay. So I think maybe I want to assume that probably that is your. So basically, what I mean here is this, right? So most times we can actually deploy our back end, right? But the front end guys have not yet deployed their front end, right? So as such, they will likely make that request from their local host, right? So that is why I included that local host, so that just in case they are still offline, right, they can make the request from their local host, right? So it means that even if they are local, they can still interact with our server. So I included their local origin, right? And also I will also include their hosted origin as well. Okay, so that's basically what I'm doing there, right? That's basically what I'm doing there. Okay, so that's the whole point of referencing their own local host, right? Because most times we can be live and they are still offline, and because they are offline, it means that that request would be made from offline, right? But then if they are offline and they are offline, none of us can make requests, right? Because of course it's local, so it means that it's only specific to you, right? But the moment one of us goes online, then it means that the other person would likely make the request offline, right? So here I'm assuming that we can go online while they are still offline, right? And because they are offline, that request is coming from their local host. So as such, we included in a room for for their own local for their own local origin, and also we also had room for whenever they actually deploy. So that's basically what is happening. You get it? Yes, before any external party interacts with our backend, we've deployed. Right? Apart from that, everything that we've been doing so far from beginning of first API till now is only local to us. So it means that it's only us that can use it, right? It's only us. Or for someone else to actually use it, that means that we have to zip our file and send the entire source code for someone else to use it. It means that the person will collect our entire file and execute that file on their own PC and use it. But apart from that, if you want someone else to use it without accessing your file, it means that we have to actually go live, right? So this thing here really works when we go live, right? When we go live, which will soon go live at the end of this week, we should begin live. Make sense?
Yeah, I understand
okay?
now.
Yeah, right. So that's basically what is happening. So we provide room for both when they're local and when they've gone live, right? Okay. Any other question pertaining to cross origin resource sharing? Any other question? All right. So no other question. So now let's see how we can properly arrange our files. Because so far each file is considered as a single project, right? And the way Fast API recommends is that you should build your application so that it looks like a package. And what is a package? A package is basically a collection of related models and sub models. So basically, you group your file in a way that each file cannot be executed on its own, right? So basically, what do I mean? I cannot navigate down to inside a folder and then execute that file, right? So that if I intend to execute the file, then I should somehow execute that file from outside of that package folder. So that's basically what Fast API recommends. And so far, if you look at how we execute our file, we can just simply navigate into our main folder, right, and just say uvcon, and then we could say dep_sec, right, and then we could just say main. App, right, and that should work, right, and that should work, right. Well, that would have worked, but they have some bug there, right, but that would have worked, right, and Fast API doesn't really support that. But so if we do that, then every other file will just be seen as a plain folder or as just a normal folder that just have that actually contains Python script, right? So fast API will not really treat it as a package, right? So now how do we make a fast API to see a folder as a package and should treat it as such, right? So it means that when executing that script, that we have to execute it from outside of that folder, so that all the relative implications, or should I say all the implications will automatically get resolved. So that's what we are going to see in this particular setup, right? In this particular setup. So we want to create our project as what we want to create our project as, why is that key we're leaving my head now? I just see it now. Hold on. We want to create our project as a package. All right. So let's see how that can be done. Okay. So what I will do is I will close up this file. So I'll close up this file, and then I'll just create another file. Right. I'll create another file. So I will go to so still on our desktop, right? Still on our desktop, or maybe still on our KodeCamp 5.0, right? I want to create a file, and I'll call this file, I'll call this app, right? So I'll call this app, right? App, right? So I want app to be seen as a package, and not the way main is busy. Main is seen as a normal folder, or as normal folder that contains Python script. So that means that if I intend to that each script can be executed single-handedly, like on its own, right? And we do not want that, right? We do not want that. So you want a situation where the folder should be seen or should be rendered as a package by Python. So how do we do that? So what I'll do is I will open up this folder using VS Code. I'll open up this folder using VS Code. So please, this particular folder will still use the same virtual environment. So I won't be creating a new virtual environment. So I'll create another folder. Sorry. That was what I did. I'll open up this folder in VS Code, not create a new one. So open up in VS Code, and then what happens is that to make Python to see a folder as a package, we have to include a very special file called __init__.py. Now, if you include that file in a folder, it automatically makes that folder to be seen as a package. So it means that every other file and folder that will live within that folder would be seen as sub packages and modules that makes up that complete folder, right? So it means that Python will not automatically see it as a collection of a file that make up one single package, and that is what we want, right? And that is what we want. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So this folder here, I'll just create a file, and I'll call this file. I will call this file. __init__.py. So that this file has to be called that way up. So this file needs to be called exactly like that, right? And the thing is that this file does not have to carry anything. This file has to be empty. So you don't type in anything in that file. And then from here, I can further put in our files, right? I can further put in our files that we need in this project. So first and foremost, we need our main.py file, right? Our main.py file. So our main.py file here will now be the entrance to our file, right? I can add as many files as possible, all right? And then each of these files would be seen as a collection of a file that makes up one single package. So it means that if I intend to execute, if I come inside this folder and try to execute one file, then Python should tell me that it does not accept such, because of how this folder is structured with the init file there. Right. So it means that if I intend to execute a file, I need to pass through the parent folder, which in this case is the app folder, before executing any file, right? Within that particular package, right? So that's basically what we want. So like I said, you can create as many files as possible as you want. You can create as many files as many folders that you want within this particular app folder. And each of them would be seen as one single package. But what you should also keep in mind is that each folder that you create needs to contain what the underscore init file, right? So any file that you create within this app folder should carry the underscore init underscore in.py file, right? So that that folder too that can be seen as a sub package within the entire single package. Am I making sense? Please, am I communicating? Are we following?
Yes, please, we are following.
All right. So here we can do what we can depending on how big our project is, right? Depending on how big our project is, and can determine how many files and how many folders that we need within this project. So the key thing is what is to put things in order, to put things in separate places. So maybe as we go, I can just be creating files that's being needed. But for now, we need the main.py. And the good thing again is that I can create another folder here, and I can call this folder router. So it means that all the routes I want it to be available in this folder, right? So no longer in our main.py, right? So things are beginning to make sense. I remember I said that every folder that you create within this app folder needs to contain what underscore init py. That way it tells Python that this folder is a sub package in the app package, right? Now on that, this file is a very special file. It means a lot to Python, right? So that means we have to come in here and do what? And we have to create hold on. We have to create the file. I'll call the file what underscore init underscore.py. All right. So another thing again that we need again is maybe we will have another file outside of folder, right? So I'm trying to arrange everything as best as I can, right? There is no order in how things should be arranged in your project, right? But it is how you view it, right? Basically, how you want to arrange it, what is up to you. So I can have another file that I can call database setup, right? So basically, this file will handle database setup. So I can call this database underscore setup.py, right? So basically, main is just going to be like an entrance to all these files, right? I don't want to include so many things. Okay, so the init.py file needs to be empty, right? It's just a file that needs to stay in there and takes nothing, right? So please don't ever type anything inside init.py. It's a special file that Python needs to see things in a different way, right? It's a special file that Python needs to see things in a different way. All right. So what again do we need? So we can also need we can also have dependencies, right? So basically all our dependencies will just stay in this file, right? And dependencies.py, right? So all of them will just stay in that file, right? So no longer in the main, right? No longer in the main. Maybe I can have utils. So utils will just be some random file, right? So random function that we can be using within our project, right? So some random function that we can be using within our project. Random functions in a sense that these functions are not dependencies. They are not middlewares. They are not route function, right? They're just function that maybe, let's say, a function that hashes password, right? So that kind of function I can put it in these utils, right? So function that hashes and verify password, or the function that generates JWT token. All those kinds of functions can just live in that particular file there, right? And what again I want to have? I could have CRUD. Maybe when we get to database interaction, I can have CRUD, right? CRUD. So CRUD here, I want CRUD to be a folder, right? Because it will contain files for each route files, right? So basically, I'll tell you what I mean. But for now, let's just put what the special file called underscore init underscore.py. All right, so everything is beginning to make sense, right? So if you look at this from our VS Code points, right? Sorry, our file explorer, right? So this is basically what it will look like, right? So you have our main entrance, the dependency, the database setup, the utils, the special file. Then this folder here is what is the folder that will carry all the files pertaining to what to all the routes that we did in this project. I'll put it in that particular folder. Then here is basically going to be a folder that should hold all the database interaction, right? The database interaction will stay there, right? Database interaction will stay there. So I can also have another folder, or I can have another file, or maybe another folder. And I call this folder schema. So schema here is going to be a folder that will do what that will handle all our pedantic violations, right? So here I can come here and put my underscore init. Underscore init underscore file. I can have to remember schema is the one that handles everything pedantic violations. So please, okay, so let me not bring in much file so that it doesn't complicate us. But basically, as we proceed, if there's need to create more files or more folders, we will create it. So let's go ahead and let's start putting in our source code, right? Let's put in our source code and let's see how this thing will move from main to the rest of our folder, right? To the rest of our scripts. Okay, so let's come here and let's have main. So of course our usual source code, right? So I'll have from fast API. Sorry, this should be single A from fast API. All right. So another thing again that we want to make sure that this project is using our virtual environment. Remember, this is where we have all our installation, right? So everything is there. So I could just to do that, I can do Control+Shift+P. I think we did this before, where I can choose what my interpreter. So in this case, I wanted to use this one that we've already used so far. So which is let's enter interpreter path, find interpreter, and I want to use this one that is available here. The one in the library box. So go to script, we go to Python. So this is the one that we want. So we select it. All right, so that when we import fast API now, it should now work. So from fast API, right? So it's working now. I need to import what fast API, and then I can have my app equals to what fast API. Yes, all right, and I can import that. Can have our route. So for now, just put one single route here. So I can say app. This should be so I told you already, we can compute and ask. This should be app. Okay.
Sorry, sir. Please, can you repeat that process of selecting our virtual environment? Because it happened very fast. I know I've done it before, but I've missed it even the first time you did it.
Okay. All right. So simply just do. You press down. You press down. When you click on the file, it's that is in this case you open this file called main and you click on this file itself, right? So your cursor needs to be inside this file, right? Because if your cursor is outside here, what happens is that it will want to search a file here. And we don't want to search a file, we want it to be here. So click inside this file and then you do Control+Shift and +P. P as in pineapple, right? So you click that and this should bring up this console. And then you can search for interpreter. So because I've used this before, so mine keeps coming up at the top. But then if it's not coming up, just search for interpreter. Then you can see what Python select interpreter. So when you click on it, then you can do what you can navigate. You can select what that interpreter that you have. That interpreter is available in your virtual environment box, right? So if I click on this, by default, VS Code will use the interpreter that comes alongside with the Python installation, because we don't want that one, right? So what we want is somewhere available in somewhere else, right? So click on that enter interpreter part, click on find, and then navigate to where your virtual environment is, which in this case our virtual environment is this library box, right? The interpreter is available in the script folder. So go to script and then search for Python, not Python W, not this one, Python itself, right? Python itself, and then you click on it. So this is your interpreter. I think someone once asked me, how does Python interpreter look like? This is how it's like. is an application, right? So just click on it and then select interpreter. And you're good to go. All right. Yes, we created the routers for endpoint, which we'll go back and do that. Yeah, we go back and do that. Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? All right, so let's just test out this man, and then after that we do what we can select it. We can move it to an appropriate place where it should be, right? So I have my def here, and then I would say home, and this man takes in nothing, and for now this man will just simply return. It should be return and render. Sorry, that's Django. So you return a message, and then we say hello world, right? So let's see, and so we have that now. Let's go and let's see if this is working as anticipated, right? So if you go again, so how do we now execute our file? So now if I should go back one more step behind, so cd dot will take you one step behind, because remember this folder, that app package, right? The app package that we just created, right, is in the same folder as endpoint, right? The same place where you have main. So that means if I should move from main one step behind, I will have access to what to app there, right? That's basically what I'm doing here. I want to move from this main here, right, to endpoint 5.0. So cd dot will take me one step behind, right? And then I'm go ahead and click my enter. Dot, and then you see I go one step behind. If I should not say there are list out the available folders or files in that directory, I have my app there, right? Now if I should say cd into app, right, and then I do dir, right, and then I try to execute this file, our normal way of executing by saying uvcon, right, and I do main and I do app. What happens is, well, this will work unless till we start doing importation. Then this man will draw an error, right? This man will draw an error, because the thing is that once you start importing things, once you start doing importation between your files, right? So this will no longer work, which will come back and we try that see, of course. So when we come back and we try that and that draws an error, I'll tell us what to do. But then if you go to our domain name, this will now give us hello world, right? So that is working as expected. But then that still violates the whole point of having set up all these folders, right? So that means that I want all my endpoints, right, all my routes to live in this folder called router. So in this folder, I will just create a new file, and I'll call this file. Maybe I'll call this file. Hold on, looking for a name. I can call this file. So basically, the whole point is that the router folder, right, can carry as many files as possible, right? So assuming you have a very big project, so basically you want each maybe for each section of that project, right? You want a file that holds all the routes for that particular section. So that's what I'm trying to come up with, right? So let's assume that I need authentication now, right? I can say user authentication, or you have to say user management. Let's use user_management, right? User management. So basically, all the routes that relate to user management will live in that file. I don't know if you're getting the point, right? And then if I have another thing, let's say blogging, right? Let's say this app also have blogging part. So I can have blogging here, right? I can call it blog.py, right? And then every route that relates to that blogging section of this will live in the blog.py, and so on and so forth. I don't know if I'm making sense. Are you making sense? Are we following?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So let's so that's basically the whole point of where a router is a folder. Normally, I will say let router what a file, but then you can have 1,000 routes. Imagine putting 1,000 routes in one file. It still doesn't make sense, right? So instead, let the router be a folder that can contain files for each section of our project, right? So let's assume that for user management, I need a file that I need a route for sign up, login, all those stuff we live in this user management, view that and so on and so forth, right? So let's go back to our main and let's bring out this man, right? Let's cut this man out. Let's cut this man from there, and let's bring this man back to user management, right? And let's paste it there. But there is still a problem. There's a problem. Right? There's a problem. The problem here is that remember, in order for us to create a route, right, we need access to to the instance of Fast API, right? If you look at what we have there, see up there was the instance of Fast API. So that means we cannot invoke this man at several places, right? So I cannot come here and I cannot come to my user management and import Fast API and invoke it again and use it, right? That would not actually make sense, right? Because we need that man to happen one time in the entire project, right? So now what do we do? Well, luckily for us, Fast API has a junior brother, right? I will call it junior brother, right? That we use in creating routes. So basically, this particular module, this particular class is used specifically for creating routes, right? And then we can somehow include those routes in the Fast API instance. Am I making sense? So what happens is that we can import that class, and then we use that class specifically to create routes, right? And then that class can repeat as many times as possible. And then at the end of it all, we add all the routes that we've created to the Fast API instance. So that's basically the logic or how that would go about. So let's see how that works. And this class is called API router. That's basically its name. And it's meant for what? And it's meant for creating API route. So I could say from Fast API, right? I want to import API router. So that's the man that we want to use in creating all our routes. Okay, so I will call this man. So basically it's similar to how you make use of your Fast API, right? So you have to invoke that man. You have to invoke this man. So here I could just come here and say router. Alright, sorry, this should be lowercase. So I'm gonna say router. Router is equals to the instance of API router. Right, and from here I can simply replace our app with this, right? And I can call this login, right? And I can create as many routes pertaining to user management here. I can call this logout, right? I can still call another one down here. I can call another one here. I can call it register, right? And if I register, remember the path cannot repeat itself. If not, the first one will always execute, while the rest will not execute. Will never execute, right? So this one will log out, and this one here would be login, right? And of course, I can have the same thing available here as well. So I can just copy this man and go to block, right? Here I could have a add to block, add to blog, right? Add to sorry, this can be create a post. This can be create a post, right? And say create underscore post. Here can be a update. Okay, update post. Here can be update underscore post. Right, this other one here can be maybe like, right? This one can be the route that handles liking or post, like underscore post, and so on and so forth, right? So and so on and so forth. The messages I can leave it as it is. So maybe I can just have like blog here. Maybe I can add like blog here. So everything syncs, right? So I can have this could be like blog, and so I can have blog / script, right? And I can have something happen here / updates / like. I have another one here called account. /login. All right, slash that slash this. Okay. All right. So now we have our routes created. Now let's see what happens. Now let's see what happens. So basically, this is what API router is used for, right? It's used to create route, right? So this way, this man can be repeated as many times as possible. But our fast API cannot be invoked everywhere, right? This man here cannot be invoked everywhere. So now that we have this, now how do we now solve this problem? How do we now solve this problem? Now if I execute our file, well, this should still work. Where is it? Now, if I execute our file should still execute just fine, but then nothing should really happen. Nothing should really happen. Because at the moment, if I try to go to our, let's say our route here, let's say create a block dot slash create a post, right? Block slash create a post. But I try to go here, then this should tell me that particular route cannot be found, right? Because definitely Fast API is not aware of that URL yet, right? But then we have those URLs created. Now, what do? We have to do what we have to make Fast API to be aware of this particular URL that's created in these files, right? So now what do? I can go back to my main and I can import them down here. I can bring them down here, right? So I could just simply say from where exactly? From routers. So this one is available in routers. I want to import our blog, also import our so basically what we want is more like is the instance of each of these routers here. That's basically what we want. We want the instance of this because this instance is tied to all this man, right? It's tied to all this man. Same thing happens with this instance is tied to all this man, right? So now you pass that instance to Fast API, and Fast API will be aware that this instance of API router has been used to create this and that route. Okay. So now if you go back to main again, main.py, and I say bring the instance of I say if I should say routers dot blog, right? Blog, I should import router, right? So that's basically what we want. We want that instance. But then the problem is that this man here will likely come and override this other man. Because if I should just say bring the router from user management, you can see that this router already will override that other router. So that is why I did that other previous importation, right? So instead of importing the router itself, because there's always a tendency that you likely copy this thing like this, right? And then edit it in another file. So to save you from that stress, right? You can just simply use this other manner of importation. So instead of explicitly bringing out the router, I would bring the file itself. So I would say import the file itself and not the router, right? So if I should say from router import blog, right? I will also import user management, right? So now that we have that, now we need to make Fast API to be aware of this router. How do you do that? We simply just say app dot. Now, if you look at this, if you look at the functions that's available in the instance of Fast API, there's one called include router, right? So include router is used to take in the instance of API router wherever they are. So this man takes in the instance. So from here you can see that it takes in the instance of API router. From that instance, Fast API can know how many routes has been created using this particular instance, right? And see this instance, there are two of them, right? But there are two of them here, right? So if I add one, Fast API will only be aware of this one, right? I will not be aware of the other ones, right? So that means I have to add both of them. And how do I can simply pass that instance by saying blog dot the router itself, right? Remember, this router itself is what is this man here, this router. That's the man that's calling that instance of that man, right? So if I go back again, then I'll do the same thing for user management. And with that, all good. Now you can say that our main file is looking very neat, right? Our main file is looking extremely neat. No much code. Everything is staying on wherever they're staying at, right? Now let's go back and let's test. Now this is where the problem will start. Because remember, this thing is now seen as a package and not any random folder, right? Not a plain folder. So it's seen as a package. So if I try to enter inside that package, remember I'm not inside the package. So I'm inside the app folder itself, right? And then I try to execute this man. This man should throw an error saying that we are trying to do a relative import. Now Python was not able to resolve all this information that we have here, right? All this information that we have here, because we are trying to execute one file, right? Single-handedly. So now, what do we do to solve this problem? We have to execute this file from outside of the package and not inside of the package, right? So that is how Python, right, now sees this file as a package, and such. You cannot execute inside of it. But then you can do what you can only execute outside of it. And what makes it a package is because of what? It's because of the init.py that we added in those folder, right? So Python will now treat it as one single code base. So you cannot fire up one and leave the other, right? So all manner of execution needs to happen outside. So now what do we now do? You have to go outside of the app folder. So you say cd and then dot move outside, and then from here we can do what we can execute. And how do we execute? And this main file is now inside of the app package. So that means you have to reference the parent folder, which is what app dot the main file followed by what the instance of fast API. So going forward, this is how we start executing our file. So you cannot go inside that app folder any longer and execute main. That needs to happen outside of the app folder, right? So now if I should not execute this now, this should now execute just fine, as you can see, right? That execute just fine. So that's basically what we want. Now this structure that we just done here will help during deployment, so that Python sees everything as one single code base and not a single file as a single code base, right? So that is the whole point of making sure that this thing is seen as a package. Now if you go back again and we try to fire up this request, this should now go through successfully, because we now have the fast API is now aware of that particular endpoint now. Is that okay? Question? Do you understand? Are we following? Choma, your hand is up.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, right? So we've seen the way it works for routes, right? That's our endpoint. So what about dependencies, right? What about utilities? Utilities, we can just do from utilities, then import the particular function. Then what about our dependencies? Like
okay.
If we call it into the route, does that
Yes, it will work. Definitely, it will work. If you have dependency, let's say I have a dependency called a function. Remember the function. Your dependencies are mostly functional classes, right? So if I have the one at dependency, right? This is the one that should return. Remember, dependencies they return a value, right? So that should return a value saying I am a dependency. I am a dependency, right? I think that can be our dependency. Maybe dependency should also be a folder where it can contain files for dependencies specific to each section. So it's all up to you, right? But then anyhow, wherever that file is, right, you can import it within themselves, right? You can import it within themselves. There is no problem, right? There's no problem. So let's say I want to use that dependency in our block, this block here. So what do I have to do? Remember, to make a file, to make a function a dependency, you need to import the depends, right? So I would say from fast API, import depends, right? And then I need to bring in my dependency, right? So I would say from. So where is my dependency located? It's located outside of my route folder, right? So if I would say dot, it means that I'm trying to access a file inside a route folder, right? If I should do another dot, it means go outside of my route folder, right? And then and then get me this dependency file. So from dot means move from the parent folder to the outside folder, right? And get me dependency. So I've forgotten how to really call this stuff. Is it file structuring? It means okay, this thing works in front end a lot, right? But basically, dot means the current directory. Dot means something outside of the current directory, right? So dot means go outside of router, right, and come to here to the app folder and bring dependency and then do what import. So what I need to import. And what do you have with the one, right? So here I can just pass the one as dependency. Here I could say response. So that response from dependency is equals to what depends, and this man takes in what our def one, right? Here I can just simply show you response from dependency equal to what response, right? That makes sense, right? So let's go back and let's refresh our server. Well, yeah, yes, you can use a different names for instance of the API router. Yes, you can use a different name, right? But most of the time, people always like to copy from another file and paste in another file, so that name always comes across like that, right? But you can use a different name. There's no problem. All right. So let's go back and let's test. Let's go back and let's fire up this request again. So we should now have a hello world alongside with yes, the response for dependency. So you can see that works, right? So your implementation within them still works, right? Your implementation within them still works. But the thing is that Python will see all these things as a single code base, right? That's just interacting with one and another, right? So your implementation still works as it should work, right? It still works the way it should work, right? So let's assume that I have another route here that says let's go to user authentication. Let's just put something there. So let's say for the login, let's say for this login, one has to do what to type in their email and password, right, to actually log in. So now what do we need? The schema. The schema needs to do what? Needs to violate that information. So what I can do is I can go to the schema folder, right? So probably I can create a file for user management, right? So basically this user management would be the file that should handle all the schemas pertaining to user management, right? And schema, remember when I mean schema, is mostly what I'm talking about Pydantic, right? So basically what to verify what comes in and what goes out. So that's basically what the schema folder would be doing. Validation, data validations, right? So I will have the login class. So remember we need the Pydantic. So I will say from fast API, from Pydantic import base model here, and here I can start creating my class. My class here would be login, and I take some base model, right? And for this man here would do what? This man here would further this man here would have the email, which will be an email string. Let's bring the email string there, right? This one here would be the email string validation, right? And the password would be a string, right? And of course I can then import it and use it in my router, right? So I'll go to my router again and I will bring that man. So I would say from dot current directory, right? Dot app folder, right? And then go to schema dot user management specifically, right? I want to import the login, right? And then I can bring this man here, and I can say that this man should accept a detail, right? And this should be what? A login, right? So that means that this man is accepting what? Something from the request body. So this should be post. And that will work, right? And that will still work. So basically now all of our files is now structured. Everything is now staying where it should stay, right? So we don't have everything piled up in one file. So we have the router for our router. We have the schema for our Binance violations. We have the code when we get to code, how to interact with database. It will stay there. Like we have a file for our random functions. We have our main.py. If I look at the main.py, very simple and very neat, right? No much code, no. So it's far more better compared to what we've been doing so far, right? Question with this file structure. Now, this file structure is dependent on you as a developer, right? You can create as many folders as you want. You can create as many files as you want. It's all developer's choice, right? It's all developer's choice. Right. Choma, your hand is up.
So how do we treat security and middleware?
Security and middleware. Of course, you can create a file for middleware and put in your middleware there, and of course, and then okay, so middleware is attached to middleware is attached to fast API instance. Middleware needs to stay in this file, right? It needs to stay in this file, but you can export this man, but that would violate the whole point of data structure. So because the whole point of file structure is to make sure that everything instance of fast API lives and stay in this file. Right. So instead of exporting this fast API and then creating it and then using it to create middleware, you can create a middleware in this file. That will work. Then for security, security is treated as dependency now. So you can just simply go to your router, right? Let's say I want to secure where it says create a post, this man here, right? What I can simply do is I can simply just bring in security now. So I can just simply say from fast API dot security import port to password here, and then I can start up the instance of security. So I will say sec is equals to what this man, and the token URL is equals to login, okay? And then I can just use this man all over. So basically, I want to put this man here. Since this man is considered as dependency, I want to put it here. Paste it there. Where is the right one? Then bring this man. Bring it here. So since you are treating this man as dependency, but this is like a built-in dependency, not our custom made. So it doesn't really matter. So both built-in and custom made will stay in this dependency file, right? So I'll just put this man there. And then I can come to my blog and just import sec there, right? So security there is this man here, right? This man here. So basically, you want to pass this man as dependency. So I will come here now and then to my blog, and I can pass it as dependency. So we will block. Let's say. So instead of passing this man, I can pass it. Right, so I can pass it. So this man out. So this should now be secured, right? This should now be secured. So if I should go back again to make a request or refresh my server, and refresh, this should now ask me for authentication. Right. So you can see, so that works, right? So the whole point is that let everything, you can create as many files as you want, and you can import and use them within themselves, right? But let everything stay within one single folder, and let that folder be seen as a package, so that when you deploy it, Python sees as one single code base, right? Python sees as one single code base. You can create as many folders as you want, you can create as many files as you want, right? And you can just be importing them within yourself, right? You can be importing it within themselves, right? But know that if you create a folder, add init, and add the underscore init underscore, right? The byte. So every folder that you create within your project, your package folder should carry that special file. and you can create as many files as you want. So it depends on how you want to structure your code base, right? It depends on how you want to structure your code base. Right, Choma, your hand is still up.
Yes, please. In security, how do we treat secret key? Like, where do we put it? How do we hide it? And then, for middleware, I get your concept, right? That since it's been attached to the API, but what about those ones that are not attached to the API, like calculating time it takes for our routes to run? Do we also still keep that in main? So yes or no? And then also, how do we treat our security key to hide it?
All right, let's see. Let's look at that. Let's. All right, middleware. Middleware is somehow attached to this map.
No, I'm not talking about CORS. I'm not talking about the whole interaction with front end right now. I'm talking about like maybe that the one you taught us in our previous class now, like what we want to do before the RAT function does triggers, and what we also want to do after the RAT function. So that's basic. Those ones we build by ourselves.
Yeah,
How do we answer?
Yeah, that need to stay, right? Because you know that middleware is attached to the. Well, let's check something. Let me check something, but I'm not sure. But let's just check something. Let's say a router. Let's see the available functions of router. Hold on, let's see the middleware. So the middleware needs to be attached to the app, right? The middleware needs to be attached to the app, right? So that's a so in the case of middleware, please, this man needs to come in here. So this man needs to come in here. Hold on, please. Let's middleware needs to stay in the main file. I'm not sure middleware can be attached anymore. Router dot, let's say middleware. It's having middleware stack. And nope, that will not work. Not that this will not work. I'm not use that middleware stack, so I'm not sure that will work. Right, but then if in the case of middleware, then we don't have a choice than to bring it to app. Somehow I need to bring it to app middleware. Somehow I need to bring middleware down here, right? And this takes in HTTP, right? And then here we can start creating our function. So in a case where you need to start creating your middleware functions, right? Of course, you have to put it in. You have no other choice than to put it here in the main.py, in the where you have your instance of fast API. As this decorator is only available in the instance of fast API, right? So you need to bring it in. So that needs to stay in here. Same thing happens when you need to add middleware. So the thing is that whatever functions, whatever function that is attached to fast API, and that cannot be accessed outside of that, then that function needs to come in and stay in the same directory or in the same file where you have the instance of your fast API. How make sense?
Please, has class ended?
All right. I think we're done, right? So like I was saying, functionalities that requires access to fast API, like creating a custom middleware like this, right? Can stay here in the same file with where you have the instance of your fast API. There is no problem, right? There's no point of exporting this man out to other files and then using them, right? The whole file sharing stuff will just be found later, right? The whole stuff just right. I think that on now. Is there any other specific questions? We've answered our time. Any other specific questions?
Then I just said, please, you've not answered the whole security. How to hide our security key file. Aside from the one you told us before, keeping it aside the folder, there was something you mentioned. You said something about there's another way to go about it, but since you're having network issue, let's just quickly take this faster route. So the other way to go about it is what I'm asking about.
Okay.
Especially
right,
when it comes to this big application.
Okay, so one of the easiest way of hiding sensitive information is using a third-party model or a third-party library to do that, right? Where you can hide your stuff, your sensitive information in a virtual environment, variable. So one Python built-in library is the python.env. There's a library called python-env. I think that is what people use. That is what we use to, okay, because when we talk about database, we will get credentials and then we look at how we can hide that credential using python-env lab. So we look at that, right? We look at that maybe in our next class. So I'm looking at how we can meet. Say this week will likely be our last week for lectures. I'm thinking. And looking at is it possible that we can make out with the only concept that we have left is database. Right. So when we get to database, we look at how we can hide those sensitive information because our database will come with credentials. And we don't want those credentials to be accessible to any other person. So we look at it, we look at that hiding in that particular class is trauma, right? You look at that in that particular class.
Okay.
Right. So what again? So what do you guys think? But if you guys think that you guys can accommodate the database in one, we can just do on Thursday, right? And then I'm flexible. Yes, we'll likely meet last. That this week will likely be our last tutoring week. Except management said that we should go one more week. But default this week is the end of our third month CodeCamp. Third month is usually the last month of tutoring. So, but the only concept that we have left is database interaction with data, because so far we've been saving things to file or dictionary, right? Which in actual sense, we should not be doing that. In actual sense, we should not be doing that. Okay, so I think that's so if you guys can spare out some time, maybe we look at the database in two classes, maybe to put it down, right? And then deployment. Deployment is more like a 30 minutes thing, just to push it, just to push the code from this one to where it should stay. So what are you guys saying? Maybe tomorrow I'm meet on Thursday, or meet on Thursday, and post everything on Thursday. I think that's basically all for it. I've finished this class. I've finished this class. So yeah, next class look at database. Please, Miss Thomas, please give me my so I can end this recording.
So sorry, please, how do I do that?
I think if you click on my name, say give host. I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the video record is available. It would be available. We have pre-recorded video. Which one is pre-recorded video again, please? I think the classes videos are usually uploaded. Yeah, the classes videos are usually uploaded. Right, so I'm ending this recording here. So that's it. So the video